Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. Today, I got my very special guest, Miss Rhea Story, my amazing wife, on with me. So, welcome to the podcast today, Rhea.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And this episode is actually coming out on Christmas Day. And so, if you're listening on Christmas Day, instead of doing something else, Merry Christmas. And if you're listening later on after Christmas or some point in the future, hope you had a Merry Christmas and safe and enjoyable holiday season. So I wanted to bring Rhea on because she's got a book called Prime Time: The Power of Effective Planning. And if you're not familiar with Rhea, she is an amazing person as far as leading herself well. I don't know anybody who could write a book like this who actually lives it as well as she does. So when the stuff she's going to share with you today, she don't just talk about it, she lives it. So tell me about what motivated you and inspired you to write this book, Rhea.
What inspired me to write it? I meet so many people who struggle with what they call time management. And really, when we think about it, it's not about managing time, because none of us can manage time. You can't do anything with time. You can't manage it. It just is. It just goes. And so when I realized it's not really about managing time, it's about managing ourselves within time. That's what inspired me to write the book, because I think that there's a kind of a lack of awareness, really, that it's not time isn't something we can do or save or keep or buy more of. It's really prioritizing our priorities within the time that we have.
So everyone who's listening, if you've been listening to me very long, you know I talk about personal growth and leadership development. So what Rhea's talking about, again, is leading yourself well in time, because you can't manage time. You can only lead yourself through time. And with this being the last episode of 2020, we're going to do a two-part series. So this will be part one is this one, the last episode for 2020, and then we'll have a part two for the first episode of 2021 coming out on New Year's Day. So make sure you check back with it if you like what you're hearing here. We're going to tell some stories in each one of them, but the main thing is for you to reflect on how did 2020 go. We know it's been a crazy year for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. A lot of people have been struggling due to lack of work. A lot of people have been struggling due to overwork. And then there's folks in the middle. So how did 2020 go for you? And I'm talking to you, the audience. How did it go? Did it go the way you wanted it to go? Or, did you invest your time in 2020 and use it wisely? Or did you have some spare time and use it not so wisely? What do you think about that, Rhea? What kind of stuff have you seen this year in 2020 with people? Some people using their time effectively when they had an opportunity, and some people not using it effectively. What's some different scenarios you've seen or heard about, or you yourself?
Sure. I've seen a huge range of people who have used their time very effectively in the let's just face it, it's been a little bit of a chaotic year, just certainly not what any of us expected. It's kind of almost a tongue in cheek, this time last year, we were all talking about 2020 and kind of the concept of 2020 vision and, what's your vision for 2020? And nobody, I guarantee you, nobody could have been able to predict how this year would really shake out. And I know you and I we were traveling as we normally do right up until March, and then the world shut down and we sat home for 4 or 5 months, right, without doing anything. And one thing I realized was that we could take that, like anything in life, we can take the opportunities that we're given and make the most of them, or we can focus on the opportunities missed and the opportunities lost. And so one of the things I wanted to do this year when we had that completely unexpected downtime was I wanted to make good use of it. So I got really intentional. I wrote 2 books this year, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me and the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me workbook, because this was a project I'd been waiting for the time to do, and I'd kept pushing it off. And I used the excuse that we were busy, that we were traveling, and that's true. We were busy and traveling, but I'd kind of been using that as an excuse. And you were there with me, and we were speaking in Albany, Georgia. And I told right from the stage, I said, you know what? I've been using our travel and our busy schedule as an excuse not to write this book. And I'm going to make that commitment to myself that even if we're busy, I'm going to work on this book this year. And then COVID happened, and suddenly I had several months to just sit at home and work on the book. So that was kind of an unexpected bonus amount of time for me. And I think I was able to use that very effectively. But I've also seen people who, you know, kind of used the unexpected downtime to just, you know, have a self stay-at-home vacation, if you will. You know, I've heard jokes about the quarantine 15 of people who threw their health and wellness goals kind of out the window. I've seen people who, you know, binge watch Netflix for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, right? It's just simply realizing that whatever time we have, we can use it, or we can invest it, or we can waste it. And it's all relative to where we are and where we want to go and what's going to help us get there. You were talking about, you know, asking the audience, how did their 2020 go? I like to talk about the 3 questions. In fact, I encourage people to do this weekly. As you reflect back on just last week, even before you want to go to last year, what worked well, what didn't work well, and what do I need to change? Right? And if we just think of those 3 questions, what worked well, what didn't, what needs to be different going forward, you could apply that to the whole year. What worked well, what didn't, what am I going to do differently in 2021 to make sure it's a better year?
Yeah, to get very intentional about it. So everyone's listening. Before I get Rhea talking about this book, I want to tell you a little story about Rhea. And she wouldn't probably tell you the way I'm going to tell you, so I'm going to take it. It's my podcast. I can tell it however I want to. So, but Rhea, back when Rhea was really starting her growth journey, if you really don't know her story, Rhea was basically homeschooled, and there's a lot of reasons why and all that stuff, but we're not going to talk about that today. But you can check her content out and learn more about Rhea. But she basically was homeschooled, and when she left home, she didn't have a GED, so she had to go get a GED. She didn't have a high school diploma, I should say, so she had to go get her GED to get going in life. And she started working. She got a GED. She went all the way through and got her bachelor's degree. And what was your bachelor's degree in, Rhea?
My bachelor's is in management of human resources.
Management of human resources. And you had an associate's degree too, you got before that?
I got an associate's in office management and human resources and medical coding. Yep.
And then you went on past your bachelor's and you got your MBA, right?
Yep, sure did.
And
didn't know when to stop.
What everyone wants to know and what needs to know, and what I want the listeners to understand is what I'm about to say. I'm not trying to impress you, but I'm trying to inspire you what you actually can learn from Rhea, why you should want to learn from Rhea if you want to lead yourself well better and what everybody else calls time management. But Rhea went all the way through her MBA, everything, straight A's, graduated with a 4.0 GPA. Why she was going to school basically full time, she was working full time. She was working in different jobs, but she ended up, when she finished out her career, before she started doing this, she was a regulatory affairs and compliance, a director of regulatory affairs and compliance at a pretty large hospital. But she was training to run marathons. She was training to mountain bike race 2011 and 2012. During this time period, she was actually the Alabama and Georgia state mountain bike champion in her class both years. So that's 4 state championships in 2 years. While she's running, we were riding mountain bikes probably about 2,000-3,000 miles a year training. We were both racing. Plus we did like 17 races, I think, each year. So we were traveling around Alabama and Georgia all over the place. Super busy. So what I'm trying to explain to you, we were super busy. But our house was always clean, and Rhea did a good job with that, making it always happen. Anytime her family needed anything or I needed anything, she seemed like she was always available. Even though she was tremendously busy, she was always available she didn't ever look busy, although she was extremely busy. She just didn't appear to be busy. And it's because she led herself well through time. And she's the perfect person to be teaching you this. So I just wanted to brag on her a minute so that you understand when she's talking to you about the power of effective planning and time management. Rhea is a wizard at this. I don't know anybody like her. I've never seen anybody like her that I've met and got to know personally. I'm sure there's other people out there, but I don't know them. I certainly know it's not me. I do okay leading myself, but nothing like Rhea does. Rhea is exceptional. So on the back of Rhea's book, I just want to read to you what it says. And also, just so you'll know, if you're into this content, if you're still listening, you probably are interested in time management and leading yourself well through time. So I just want to plant a seed right here. Rhea, you got a workshop coming up on this some point. Can you just tell us about that briefly before we start talking about the content? That way, after people hear it, if they want some more, they'll know how to join you for actual virtual workshop.
Sure, I've got a 6-week virtual workshop coming up on prime time and time management. That's kicking off in January 5th, actually. And we really break it down into 6 virtual sessions so that it's kind of a small group coaching workshop, kind of interactive. So there'll be work involved, certainly. There'll be worksheets to go along through. I really like to take people through creating their own individual action plan for getting control of managing their time, but it's really managing themselves within time. I hear so many people say, I'm so busy, I'm so stressed, I've got too much to do, not enough time to do it in. And they say, let me buy a better planner, right? But it's not the planner that's going to help you be successful. It's learning these leadership principles about managing our time and our energy within the space that we have.
Okay. And so the back cover of Rhea's book, it says, are you living your life in prime time? And again, prime time is the title of the book. Are you living and working in alignment with your purpose, passion, and personal mission? Are you living an abundant life, accomplishing your goals and achieving your dreams? So in this book, In Prime Time, The Power of Effective Planning, you'll learn how to set and achieve the goals that are important to you, how to set boundaries, and how to increase effectiveness at home and at work. And that's what you got to know. This stuff helps you really lead yourself well, which is also managing your life at the same time at home and at work. So this book also, when they buy it online, Rhea, in the store, it comes with worksheets or video? You got 2 different options in our online store, your online store?
There are worksheets in the book. So the book is kind of a workbook. There's obviously a lot of teaching and content, but then in the book itself, there are worksheets for the reader to go through. So actually getting some of that practical experience of going through the exercises, right? It's not just a book that you read. It's actually going to ask you to do some of the exercises, because the lack of information is not what holds us back. It's the application. And so just reading this book or any book isn't enough, right? It's the application. And so the worksheets are there so that the reader can actually get some practice applying these principles and working through them.
Okay. And that's, for the listeners, if you like what we talk about on this podcast and the next part 2, you get this book. You don't just read the book. Rhea's saying she's got worksheets in here where you go in, answer questions, you think on it, you reflect on it, and it's really going to help you be intentional about moving forward. And again, she talks about it's complete with personal coaching worksheets. You'll walk step by step through your individual action plan to achieve success and harmony in each of the 4 dimensions of life: physical, mental, relational, and spiritual. Talk to me about those 4 dimensions real quick, Rhea.
Sure. We use the analogy or you've probably heard the analogy that life is like a wheel, right? With the different dimensions of our life represented within that wheel. And if one dimension of life gets completely out of balance, then your wheel, so to speak, won't roll smoothly. Just like a real wheel or tire, right? If it's out of balance, if it's out of alignment, it won't roll smoothly. And we're the same way. Now, we can function out of balance in one dimensional of life for the short term, but sooner or later, it's going to catch up to us. An example of this is, the busy executive who, doesn't take care of their health because they're running a business and working long hours. And so they don't exercise, because exercise is important, but it's not one of those things that's just going to happen to you, right? You have to go do it. And so I know a lot of professionals who push their health and wellness to kind of the back burner, but sooner or later that's going to come back to you, you know. And it's the executive who ends up with a heart attack in the hospital because they didn't take time to exercise or eat well. And so, yeah, short term, we can get away with neglecting one of those 4 dimensions of life, but long term, we've got to be nurturing each one of them. And that's just the way we are as humans function. You know, we're just designed to make sure that we're in harmony overall.
All right. So Prime Time. Let's talk about this book. I know Prime on the cover, Prime is all capital letters. Time is not. And Prime is all capital letters because each one of those letters actually stands for something. So break that down for me. What is why did you pick that title, Prime Time, and capitalize Prime like that? What's that all about?
Well, I use the term prime time, but prime is an acrostic, which means each of the letters stand for another word. And when you put them all together, it forms a word. So each of those letters in the word prime represent one of the 5 ways that I categorize time. So the first one obviously is the P, what I call the power block, right? And activities and energy that we spend in this block are purpose driven. They are things we are passionate about, and they are very productive. So, you know, when you are working in your zone, right? When you're doing the work that you are created to do, and it's just everything's clicking, you know, it's flowing, it's going. If you're an author, it's where you're writing the best work of your book. If you're a speaker, it's when you're in front of the audience. If you're an entrepreneur, it's, you know, the production of your business. Or if it's something you're passionate about, maybe it's mentoring someone else, right? Whatever it is, activities in this block are very intentional, but they're really purpose driven, right? What our purpose is. The next letter is R, and is what I call the restorative block. And activities in this block are renewal activities, right? Things like self-care, sleep, exercise. They are restorative. Recreation would go in this block, right? To a point, as long as you don't do too much of it, because we as people, we need downtime, right? We need time for recreation, for renewal, just to renew ourselves mentally and physically, emotionally. And I like to say that, you know, in a perfect world, which I know the world isn't perfect, but if it were, 80% of our time would be spent in those first 2 blocks, in the P block and the R block, right? Because that's where you're productive and you're increasing your ability to be productive. 80% of our time could be spent in those 2 blocks, and most of us would be very effective there. The next block is the I block, the incongruous block. And activities in this block are... Wait
a minute, that's a big fancy word. I don't know a lot of blue collar folks use that word. Tell me about that word. What's that mean? Break it down. Word means, story. I need to know what that means.
That word means something that is not in line with your priorities. And time in this block could be things that are maybe important, but they're important to someone else, right? This could be when your neighbor calls and says, hey, can you help me move? Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And moving is a good, you know, it's a good thing to help your neighbor, and it's important to them. But is it in line with your highest and best priorities and values, your individual priorities, right? Because part of managing time or managing ourselves is learning to say no to some good things so that we can say yes to the great things. And so that's hard for me. You know, I struggled with telling people no for a long time. And, you know, so there again, activities in this block, that could be, you know, junk emails. I don't know how many spam emails come across these days, but telemarketer phone calls, right? That phone rings and it feels like, oh, I got to answer it right now. But then you interrupt whatever you're doing and you answer it, and it really wasn't important, right? Other people's priorities, activities that just aren't in line with your values, they could be good things, but they're not necessarily your priorities. And then the M is what I call the marginal block. And that activities in this block are, you know, are emergencies that really happen because we didn't take care of the right things to begin with. You know, you wind up in the hospital with a heart attack because you didn't exercise or eat healthy, right? It's an emergency. You got to take care of it. Activities in this block are also, you know, the fires that happen that you have to put out. You have to address them. You can't get away from them, right? Activities or time and energy in this block is messy, maybe a little maniac, you know, it's just kind of crazy. It's happening to you and you have to deal with it. But most of the time and energy spent in this block is because we did not take care of our biggest priorities on the front end. And it could be everything from you got to run to the store at 9 o'clock at night because you forgot to buy milk on the way home from work, right? And, you know, that's an example. It also could be, gosh, the power company turned the lights off because we didn't have a good system for paying the bills, right? It could be anything like that. These are the crisis activities. They happen to us. And then the E block is the last block. It's what I call the expendable block. And activities in this block are pure time wasters. It's important to note here, you know, like I spoke to this, we all need some sense of renewal. So if for you a little bit of renewal comes from sitting down and watching a movie or some TV or some Netflix or whatever, that's fine. That's your way of renewal. But if you're going to spend all day Saturday and Sunday binge watching Netflix, that's well outside the margin of what you need to renew yourself, right? That's just time that you wasted. Time in this block is empty, it's excessive, and it's erratic. So it's really just a complete waste. Sleeping 15 hours if you only need 8, that's in the E block. Now the thing is, you know, if nobody's in a perfect world, but ideally we spend 80% of our time in those first 2 blocks. The only way that we can get there is to learn to say no to time and energy spent in our E block, which is our time wasters, and our I block, which is saying no to some good things to say yes to the great. You got to take care of things in the M block, right? Those are emergencies, crisis. There's the fires. You got to take care of those. But the way you can decrease time in the M block is to start spending more time in the P and the R block. And the only way you can get there is to say no to time in your I block and your E block. I did a workshop on this. It's been a couple of years ago. And I actually took the attendees through some of the worksheets and things, much like we're going to do on the virtual workshop. But we did it all in one day. And one of the exercises is sitting down and actually looking at where your time goes every week. And one of the attendees, she sat down and she was like, man, she's like, as I fill out where I spent my time this week, she's like, you know what? I realized I'm spending hours on Candy Crush. She was like, I really have a whole lot more time than I thought. I'm just using it. It's all going to Candy Crush. And so she said, you know what? I mean, right there and then in the workshop, she said, I'm just going to delete this app off of my phone. And the following week, I get a message from her. She's like, life is so much better. Like, I realized I have plenty of time. I was just using it for something that wasn't serving me. And, you know, it's a huge insight for her because she was able to just free up so much of her time and energy. But really, that's that self-awareness. That's the power of the book and the exercises, right? It's just realizing, you know, we all create habits that either serve us or enslave us, right? And it's realizing sometimes we create the habits we don't mean to or just not intentionally. But looking at those things, those time wasters or those opportunities where we should say no a little more often, and realizing the power of and the freedom in doing that. I told you this, Mac, the other day. It felt great to say no to an opportunity. Someone messaged me or connected with me and then asked me if I could contribute to their event. And it really wasn't in line with my mission. You know, it would have been an I activity for me. And I just said, you know what, I'm not the best fit. And so, you know, I want to free up and protect my time, but also realizing that when we do that, you know, if I'm not the best person for that event or that opportunity, there probably is somebody else who can serve better. right? And so it's for me, that was the power of realizing that when I say no to the good things so I can say yes to the great things, I'm also freeing up that opportunity to be filled with someone who's really great at it. And I'm not the best thing for every person and every opportunity to begin with. So that was a powerful step in my awareness.
All right, that's good stuff. And this prime, if you actually could see the prime blocks like you talk about, if you actually, I know in your book you have them, you kind of illustrate them so people can see them. And prime kind of looks like a pyramid with the P on the bottom and the R, the I, the M, the E stacked up above it. And each one of those blocks gets smaller and smaller like a pyramid. So those bottom two are really the foundational components. Yeah. And it's so people can, everything in this book assumes you want to have a better life and you want to be intentional about how you're living. So yeah, there's a quote in here from Zig Ziglar that you have in your book, and it says, lack of direction, not lack of time, is the problem. We all have 24-hour days. We all do, right? We all got the same amount of time.
It's just a question of what we do about it. And there again, it really comes down to our values and where we want to go. If you are completely 100% satisfied with every dimension of your life, I don't know anybody who can say that, but if you are, then you might not need to make some changes. But most people I know, New Year's is right around the corner. This episode comes out on Christmas Day, so New Year's is a week away. There will be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who make New Year's resolutions around changing something because they're not happy with where they are. And it really comes down to our values. If I'm not satisfied with an area of my life, what am I willing to do to fix it? And that's really, there again, it comes down to the power of being intentional. But, I like to say that exceptional begins with intentional, right? We can all improve, but we got to be intentional. It's not going to happen by accident, or we'd already be there, right? And so we just have to be on purpose. So
that's pretty good. That'll kind of lead us into the close of this episode, part 1. But again, everybody listening, there's going to be a part 2 with Rhea, and it's going to be cool next time. I hope you join us on New Year's Day or sometime after that. Listen to this episode, part 2 on Primetime, the Power of Effective Planning. And we'll talk about some of the things we've done personally. We'll talk about things that'll help you be more intentional in 2021. But specifically, some things we'll talk about is values-based living, which Rhea was just touching on. We'll talk about how to get from here to there. She'll talk to us a little bit about SMART goals, and then we'll probably wrap up that episode with 3 powerful questions that Rhea will talk to you about and ask you. So I'm gonna leave you with a quote from Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says the challenge of a work-life balance is without question one of the most significant struggles of modern man or woman, either one, modern people. And that's true. So Rhea, as we wrap up this episode right here, anyone who wants to learn about you, where can they find out about you?
You find out about me at my website, riastory.com. So RIASTORY.com.
Rhea, like Kia the car, but with an R, right?
That's exactly right.
And where can they get your book? If they want to get a head start, if they don't want to wait, if they really want to become intentional and get this book or check out information about your workshop, where's those 2 things at?
Sure. So the workshop is available at riastory.com/workshop. The book is available on the website as well. Just go to the store link, or it's on Amazon. You can certainly order it from there, as you can order most things on Amazon these days.
Okay. And one thing real quick for the listeners, you and I speak all over the country. Last year we were in 40 states speaking to the blue collar groups and all that sort of stuff. We support each other in our journey. We have my lane, your lane, and our lane. But what is your true lane? You support me and speak with me, but what's your main focus?
My main focus really tends to be personal growth and professional growth, leadership and influence for women. I empower women to increase their influence, develop their leadership, and maximize their results personally and professionally. Because I think women tend to be a little more proactive naturally, and it really that's the group that I find that I can really help move forward in life. And but the key to that, all of us have dreams and goals and hopes, but the key to that is we've got to grow, right? We've got to become the person that can achieve those things. And that's the foundation.
Okay. So I know I got some listeners out there who are ladies, and I know a lot of men listen to my podcast, and they have a lot of ladies in their lives. So if you haven't introduced the important ladies in your life to Rhea, make sure you do that as well. And if you are a lady, a female listener, be sure to check Rhea out. And so we're going to wrap up today's episode, but thank you for stopping by. And I hope you kick off New Year's Day or join us pretty quick after that. And we're going to do part 2 of Prime Time, the Power of Effective Planning. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.